Right, let's move on because it was a phenomenal end to the weekend's NFL action last night with 2 field goals and a touchdown in the last minute and a half of the game between the Saints and the Vikings, and absolutely wild scenes in Minnesota at the end of it. Mike Carlson, good morning to you. None of us here in the studio stayed up. At halftime at 17-0, you think, okay, I can safely go to bed. I know what's going to happen here. What fools us?
Yeah, well, 17-0 was basically when I got home from doing the earlier game, and I thought pretty much the same thing. But as soon as I turned on and started watching it, the game changed completely, and the Saints down 17-0 to the Vikings in Minnesota took the game over sort of in the second half, took advantage of a couple of mistakes. Drew Brees, as he had done the week before, was amazingly efficient on offense. They sort of inexorably worked their way back, eventually took the lead on a field goal. Took the lead. The Vikings came back, and their offense was stalling. It actually looked like the Saints were the better defensive team in the second half. They got a 53-yard field goal from their kicker to go ahead. And then New Orleans, they left New Orleans about a minute and a half. New Orleans came back, and in a minute had their own field goal from 43 to take the lead. And then it looked like they were dead. 25 seconds, starting at the 25-yard line. They only got up to the 39, and Case Keenum, last play of the game, launches one up, nowhere near the end zone. He doesn't have that kind of arm, but Stephon Diggs goes up to catch it, and basically Williams, the rookie safety, who had an interception that basically started New Orleans' comeback in the second half, goes to undercut him, basically. And if you watch the video, which I'm sure, is up there for people to see, he literally runs under Stephon Diggs, and Diggs comes down, turns around, and goes untouched for the touchdown, and wins the game. It was the most phenomenal finish. And then, being the NFL, they spent 20 minutes trying to get the teams back on the field to kick the extra point, which was unnecessary, and it never happened. And Case Keenum basically just lined up a few guys and took a knee, which was crucial because the point spread was 5.5, and the Saints covered the point spread because of that.
All right, I didn't even notice that they'd covered. Okay, wow. So like billions of dollars riding on whether or not they kick the extra point, yes. And then he decides to kneel because there's no risk of if they kick the extra point and it gets blocked. It's only 2 points, isn't it, for the Saints?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. So there was no risk of them actually losing the game at that point. But so let's talk about. There's a bunch of different things to talk about off the back of this. Particularly Case Keenum. When the pre-match announcement was made, they decided that Teddy Bridgewater wasn't going to be the backup quarterback. And I thought, this is interesting. Maybe they've actually decided that if Keenum is in any way not good, that they might pull him from the game. And they got out to such a good start that it was never really an issue. But for a period in the second half, there might have been some doubt. And maybe, just maybe, Sam Bradford might have been in the minds of the coaches.
It was in my mind as well, because the interception he threw to Marcus Williams was such a bad decision. He was under pressure. He was falling backwards. He just tossed the ball up in the air in basically the same kind of spot where the touchdown came. But to do that would be such a dangerous thing, both to the team and both to Keenum, if you had to go back to him and let him play again, that I can understand, sticking with the guy who got you there. And as it turned out, fluke or not, it got them beyond. And of course, the backstory of this is that all 3 of Minnesota's quarterbacks are out of contract this year. So they're going to have a difficult decision to make as to which 1 or 2 of the 3 that they bring back.
Is Case Keenum the real deal now?
I think I said last week, it's a quarterback's league, and the way you go on the games, predicting them, was primarily based on how much you trusted the quarterbacks involved. And right now you're down to 4 quarterbacks left in the final 4 games, who are Nick Foles, Blake Bortles, and Case Keenum, and Tom Brady. And Keenum was a journeyman, basically. He had a really good season on a team with a really good defense and a really good line. His receivers Adam Thielen made a tremendous play that set up the field goal that put them ahead. So he's the kind of guy in the NFL traditionally you're always going to want to try to improve on. you're probably never going to be happy with him as your starter. And whether it's because he's a smallish guy and the way he looks, or he doesn't have the huge arm, or whatever, it's going to be a fascinating decision for them to make, whether they try to keep two of the three guys, who becomes the number one, if they try to have a battle. And of course they're probably going to lose their offensive coordinator, to a head coaching job somewhere, Pat Shurmur.
I want to pick you up on that point on the quarterbacks there, because obviously Tom Brady is head and shoulders and knees above everybody else, it seems, in the quarterback rankings at the moment of the four remaining teams. But at the same time, it seems if one team is going to stop them, it's going to be the Vikings, because of that potential home field advantage in the Super Bowl.
That's going to be, that would be huge, and they've got to get past Philadelphia first, and that quarterbacking issue was the reason why Philadelphia were underdogs at home for the first time of any top-seeded team, and they match up. They're very similar, Minnesota and Philadelphia, kind of good but not great offense, especially with Nick Foles running it, and really strong defenses. So either of those teams are probably going to be, in fact, all three of these teams, depending on how you rank defenses, these are probably the three best defenses in the league, plus New England, who are by some metrics the best offense in the league. So it's going to be a tough haul for New England, and it'll be a real challenge coaching-wise to see if they can continue to win games with a defense that, if you look at the statistics, is last or second to last in the league. But if you look at the results, including sort of points allowed, are actually quite close to the top. They and the Eagles had virtually the same statistics in terms of points allowed and points scored this season. But that was the Eagles with Carson Wentz in terms of points scoring, not Nick Foles.
Just to talk a bit about Nick Foles. Foles was awful, particularly in that first quarter. He was throwing balls, couldn't throw screen passes, was like throwing it off his receivers. And then suddenly seemed to find a bit of a groove, particularly in that second half, where he started to find receivers and started to complete third down passes and look like a serviceable NFL quarterback. How did that happen?
He is a serviceable NFL quarterback. He's got limitations, the main one of which is that he's kind of slow. The time between seeing and then getting rid of the ball is long. What they did was go back to elements of Brian Kelly's offense, their previous coach. And they were using something that's called a read pass option. Kelly did this at the University of Oregon, and his quarterbacks were primarily runners first, including Marcus Mariota. What was happening was they were giving him a very easy decision to make. Move toward the handoff to the running back. Watch the linebacker on that side. If he comes toward the run, throw the ball to the receiver who's coming behind him on basically a slant. And he was throwing a lot of easy slant patterns to receivers who weren't tightly covered. And it worked like a charm. It was actually perfect. And I think what that does, it's not only efficient for your offense, but it gets his confidence up to the point where he can make other plays. And if the Eagles, probably if Jay Ajayi doesn't fumble on the first series of the game, the Eagles probably, go off with a big lead there. And Atlanta, if they don't get the turnovers, probably don't score. I mean, they only scored off getting great field position on turnovers, only got 10 points, and their defense actually played pretty well in only allowing 15.
Okay, so the RPOs make a lot of sense for turning Nick Foles into a serviceable NFL quarterback. But how the hell does Blake Bortles turn to somebody who can go through 4 separate progressions and then finally find the out to TJ Yeldon at like the key moment of the game?
Bortles is probably the most frustrating guy to try to analyze. You mentioned screen passes. Last week, Blake Bortles was missing 4-yard screen passes by 3 yards, and seems to have trouble with that. I think Bortles, I hate to say, I hate to try to be an amateur psychologist and say Bortles, as he gains confidence, as he makes a play, then goes on to make others. But they certainly were doing a really good job of mixing things up for him, which is something, having done Jags games every week this season. When they come out and mix it up, in other words, don't hand the ball to Leonard Fournette on first down, hand the ball to Leonard Fournette on second down, make Blake Bortles throw on third down and long if they've stopped him. Bortles becomes a lot more effective off play action passes. In other words, faking the run. He was running himself a little bit, which is what he did last week and was very successful for them. He still didn't have a great game, in terms of statistics and all, but he did what they needed him to do. And again, the Jacksonville defense provided one touchdown, set up another one, and that's what Jacksonville is a defense first team. And the last touchdown of the game for them to Tommy Bohannon, where they run Bohannon as the lead blocker into the line, fake the handoff to Fournette, and Bohannon just run straight through the middle of the field. Nobody's gone with him because everybody assumes it's going to be a run, and he just threw the ball, and Bohannon made the catch. I just thought that was my favorite play of the weekend, really.
Yeah, I think we need to be open to the possibility here that Blake Bortles is the greatest NFL quarterback to ever play the game. But if we look at the Patriots on Saturday night, they sacked Marcus Mariota 8 times. It was a playoff record for Patriots. Is that to do with more the Titans' O-line? Do Jacksonville have a better O-line, or is it something that they should be seriously worried about, that this Pats offensive line, or defensive line I should say, can actually really kill Bortles and he won't even get the chance to prove that he is the greatest quarterback in the league?
No, that was purely situational. The Titans were in such a hole that they were having to pass, and the Patriots knew it. They came out in the first half determined to stop Derrick Henry from beating them. Tennessee was going to have to beat them through the air, and for a while it looked like the Titans could do it. They got a couple of, what would you say, 50-50 calls went against them. And then the Patriots went off to a 21-7 lead, and somebody called me up and said, well, 21-7, it was 21-3 last week and the Titans won. I said, yeah, but that was against the Chiefs, not the Patriots. The Patriots aren't going to let them get back in the game. So Jacksonville's offensive line played really well against Pittsburgh. And strangely enough, in a game with such a high score, which I was telling everyone to take the under of the points, which I think was 41, and they wound up scoring 87 between them. It was actually a defensive game, and it was pure Steelers. What you see is what you get. They're big-time players, made big plays, but they also failed a couple of times play calling wise. They got 2 touchdowns on 4th and long, 4th and 9, 4th and 11, to a pair of 43-yard touchdown passes, which is absolutely insane when you think of it. But they couldn't convert 4th and less than a yard, which really hurt them. And I think the Patriots against the Jags it's going to be a lot like the Patriots against the Titans, because I think they will concentrate on taking Leonard Fournette out of the game and trying to make Blake Bortles beat them, just like they did last week, making Mariota beat him. The problem is that the Jacksonville defense is a lot better than the Tennessee defense, and how they decide to play New England is going to be fascinating, especially since Tom Coughlin is in charge of football for the Jags. And Coughlin, of course, has beaten Bill Belichick twice in Super Bowls head-to-head, and seems to have his number in that sense.
I think when he was head coach of the Jags, he beat the Patriots in the championship game as well. Is that right? Back in the 90s? They
lost that championship game in 2007, but it was like a 35-32 loss, and it was sort of one of those, it was a Week 17 game that both teams played for real. And the take that the Giants had coming off of that was that we can play with these guys. They were lucky to beat us. It was very similar. If New England had met Pittsburgh, that game between the two of them in Week 16, where Pittsburgh lost on the Juju Smith-Schuster touchdown that wasn't a touchdown. What both teams took away from that was that either team could win that game, and I think that's what the Giants. Talking to OC, that's certainly what the Giants took away from the game. You like this new rig?
Yeah.
My audio must be a lot better now.
Yeah, vastly improved.
And plus, I get to play like airplane pilot while once you guys are gone.
We should get you a little controller. That can be our next.
Yeah, it'd be great. But I was looking at the if you look at the basic the standard stats, the Patriots are first in yards. And they're tied for second in points with the Eagles, but they're 29th in yards allowed. And if you look at the kind of advanced stats like Football Outsiders, DVOA, the Patriots are first in offense and next to last in defense. And everybody else is sort of, the Jags are 1 in defense, the Vikings are 2, the Eagles are 5. So it's a fascinating weekend coming up with three teams whose strength is their defense against one whose strength is their offense, and everybody says defense wins championships.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't always believe that.
But I mean, I get why you wouldn't, but like it does become a cliche because it's been true so many times. The one thing about Bortles, right? Just to go back to the Steelers game, is that like so. Big Ben would drop that bomb on Antonio Brown and the crowd would go wild and you would go, okay, well, this is the bit where they're going to come back. But he would be calm. Bortles would be calm on the next series and would like drop a bomb on Keelan Cole at one point for 45 yards. You're like, holy moly. Like, that's not what I expected him to be able to do, that level of confidence and execution.
You and 55 million other people who were watching the game, including people from Jacksonville, who I think were surprised. When you looked at the receiving statistics, I'm looking at it right now. Marquise Lee and TJ Yeldon, the running back, each had 3 catches, and Fournette had 2, and nobody else on the team had more than 1 catch, but they were all kind of big catches, like you said, to Cole. There was one to Koyak, the tight end. There was one early in the game to O'Shaughnessy, the other tight end. It was like they couldn't put together. They were grabbing what Pittsburgh was going to give them, and Bortles was finding that. It was a great bit of play design, and Bortles had to be able to execute that. And we haven't seen that from the Jags in more than a couple of games all season. And I think that makes them very dangerous for the Patriots. And of course, the reason why people say defense wins championships is that over a 16-game season, any team will only face 2 or 3 outstanding defenses. And therefore, their offense can run riot. And when you look at total points and total yardage, that's based a lot on beating the teams that aren't as good as you. But when you play the really good defenses, it puts more of a test on that offense. And only really great offenses can kind of rise to that.
I think, given the level of experience that the Patriots have, that makes them the favourites from this point forward, taking all things into consideration, right? I'm
sure they will be. And watching them against Tennessee, it was up until on Sunday morning, I said that first half against Tennessee, the second quarter really, where they came back with 3 touchdowns, was just watching poetry in football, because they did it all by formation, motion, and play design. None of it was kind of pounding it down your throat or letting your guys run and finding them like Roethlisberger was doing. All of it was lining up in a formation, Brady looking at it and seeing where the matchup was going to be and getting the matchup they wanted most of the time. To free Rob Gronkowski in single coverage, where it's very hard to cover him with one guy. Free Chris Hogan, who's been out for 8 weeks, for the only pass he caught for a touchdown. It was just beautiful to watch. And Tony Romo was making the most of it because he was calling half the plays before they happened. So they'd line up and say, well, they're running left again, because they had a mismatch there. They had 3 blockers on 2 defenders on the left side of Pittsburgh's defense, and Tennessee. And Tennessee didn't seem to be able to adjust. And I said Pittsburgh because it was Dick LeBeau, who used to be the Pittsburgh coordinator, who's Tennessee's coordinator, sitting there. And I just thought, this is fantastic football. And I think how much regardless of the line, how much faith you have in the Patriots is partly Tom Brady, but mostly it's how much faith you have in their ability to coach and scheme, both offensively and defensively, to be able to take those other 3 teams out of their games. And that's what New England, they want to try to make you play left-handed when you're a right-handed team. One
last question about the Patriots. American football is this weird situation where you can go and get a new job while you're still in your current job, and everybody knows that you're going to take that new job, but you still have the biggest games of your career on the line. As far as I know, it's really the only situation in world sport that I can think of where that happens in such a public fashion anyway. Does it have any impact that the 2 coordinators are both going to be leaving Belichick at the end of the season for these next couple of weeks? Like, how do they compartmentalize all that?
No. It's one thing when a coach walks out on you, like Chuck Fairbanks did or Bill Parcells did to the Patriots, famously, both, before Super Bowl games, they kind of announced they're taking other jobs. Everyone knows they're leaving. I mean, the big story that last week was, New England, feud between Bob Kraft and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. How are they going to be able to, it's going to affect them. How are they going to be able to play with all these guys feuding? Well, the story afterwards was, what feud? And everyone was headlining, the Patriots rose above all this tension and stuff. They had no tension. They were there to play the game, and everyone was concentrating on it. And that's going to be the story next week, and if they get to the Super Bowl the week before. Everybody knows that McDaniels and Patricia will be head coaches next year. Doesn't matter. What it says to the team, I think, is we've got two really good coordinators that teams are after as head coaches, and we'll go on and win. The situation's worse in college football in a way, because coaches literally do leave their teams after the season, but before the bowl games. And interestingly, Scott Frost from Central Florida, who went unbeaten all season, and barely made a dent in the national playoff rankings. He's going to Nebraska and announced it, but he stayed with the team through the bowl game. And that was so unusual that I think the team felt the same thing. Our coach is with us, at least for the rest of this season. Let's make the best of it. Yeah.
One last question about the Vikings. When you have one of those walk-off victories like that and the whole city goes crazy, how easy is it to come down and get ready for the next game? Like, is there any possibility that emotion isn't the manifestation of Minnesota as a team of destiny, but that actually that's the highlight reel that will be their season in miniature?
That's a really good question. And again, it's psychology that's probably beyond my ken, but I think the celebration ends tomorrow or today. They go in and watch film today. They probably get Tuesday off, and then they start practicing again. They've got to travel to Philadelphia. I think they'll be more concerned with the things they couldn't do against the Saints, and the biggest one of those was protect Case Keenum. And Philadelphia is going to be a bigger challenge than the Saints' offensive line was. They had a sub tackle in on the right side, and that hurt them. That hurt them a lot. But basically, Keenum was under pressure most of that second half, and that's the main thing I think they're going to have to clean up.
And then just finally on that, has the ghost of Blair Walsh finally been exorcised from Minnesota?
That's a great one, and that was in everybody's mind. Not only, and the TV people ran a little clip of Walsh and Gary Anderson, who hadn't missed a field goal all year and then missed one in a championship game against Atlanta. I think Forbath kicking that 53-yarder was just incredible. You get into position to give him a chance. Well, 53 is a long shot for almost every kicker, and I don't think they'll have to worry about that. But of course, if he misses a kick, you'll hear it again next week. Those kind of things are only as good as your last kick or your last game.
Mike, great stuff. Thanks a million.